Great day, everyone. This is Jason Santos, and for today, we will continue the discussion of practical research. We are already on Module 4, Understanding Data and Ways to Systematically Collect. So let's get started. So here's our guide for the most essential learning competencies, and you can see that we are already on this part of the module. And here are the things that we will be covering for Module 4 coverage, understanding data and ways to systematically collect. So on the opening of the module, we have an intro again for the quantitative research design. And the reason I said again is because if you have followed closely my discussions about practical research, we have already defined what quantitative research design is all about. So when you talk of quantitative, this deals with numbers. Uh, Numerical data is used as the primary variable for the study. Okay, it is very important that we have completed all of the tasks in the past so we will be able to understand this lesson. So what we need to know is that we have several research designs. And in the past, I have talked about the different research designs. So this has been portrayed in this slide that when a man decides to build a house, he has to draw the blueprint first. You know, kailangan mo muna siya ipagawa sa architect. There needs to be a clear map of how you are going to build the building or the house. There must be a clear and solid foundation. And in quantitative research, you are going to have a great deal of abstraction and numerical analysis, just like what I have mentioned earlier. The research designs in quantitative research are mostly pre-established, hence having an appropriate research design in quantitative research, and then the researcher will have a clearer comprehension of what he is trying to analyze and interpret. So, again, if you would recall this, I have explained this in great detail both in practical research 1 modules and practical research 2. So, there are different research designs such as descriptive, correlational, ex post facto, quasi-experimental, and experimental. But most of the time, no, especially if you are a senior high school student, okay, it would probably dwell between descriptive and correlational only. Okay, yung ex post facto, quasi-experimental, and experimental are for higher forms of research. Okay, so we have this activity in the module that you can do. There are several titles here enumerated, and all you would have to do is write down what type of research design suits them. If you need an answer on this, you can send me a message as usual, and I'll provide you an answer for this set of questions. Now, going to lesson 2, we have the sampling procedure and the sample. So, again, we have mentioned in the past that there must be a specific type of sampling that must be used because we cannot cover the entire population. It's just not practical to cover the entire population uh, when doing a study, lalo na in your level, a senior high school student, or even a college student. It wouldn't be practical to interview the entire population in your city, in your barangay, a specific population of a school or a company, right? So we have to do sampling, and I have already explained in the past that the sampling is already a good representation of the entire population. Okay, what we need to understand here is that there are different types of population. We have the target population, and there is also what we call as accessible population. So target population is what you really aim for or intend to survey, but the accessible population is more of the convenient population for you to do, and thus the need for sampling. Like for example, here you have a 240 senior high school student. Okay? 60 of those students constitutes a sample. So, hindi mo naman kailangang i-survey yung 240. You just need to get data from 60. And paano tayo naka-arrive sa number na yan? 60. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to state this. Uh, isn't it that when you cook rice, no, let's say sinabi ng parent mo, your mother or your father, anak, pakitikman nga kung pwede na yung sinaing natin, kung okay na ba siya. What would you do? Kakainin mo ba lahat ng sinaing? 'Di ba? Hindi naman, 'di ba? You're just going to taste probably isang kutsara, no? Or kutsarita, and then you would be able to tell, okay, luto na siya or what. Ganon din, ano, if you're going to uh, determine whether there is a disease or a sickness, no, yung the person has sickness or this type of disease, kailangan mo bang kunin lahat ng dugo sa katawan ng tao? Di ba hindi naman, right? You're just going to get a blood sample, and then out of that blood sample you would be able to know if that person is infected with a certain type of disease or not. So ganun yung sampling, ano, that's sampling in a nutshell. And there are ways on how you would determine the sampling size depending on the research design. Kagaya na banggit natin kanina, we have different types of research design. If it's descriptive, it's 10 to 20% may be required. If it's comparative research, 15 subjects or groups. If you have a research survey, number of participants could be 800, correlational 100 to 200, ex post facto 30 plus, or experimental 30 or more. So bottom line, there is an original way on how you would be able to determine the sample size. Meron tayong tinatawag na Sloven's formula, and you can compute for it manually. But in the past, I have already given you a convenient and easier way on how to compute for the sample size, which is the use of Reyosoft. Okay? So with Reyosoft, you would be able to compute for the sample size. It's available online, no? So bakit natin pahihirapan when we have these tools that we can use to check for the sample. Okay, so now let's go to different types of sampling, and the first of them would be what we call the simple random sampling, and that's under the probability sampling in quantitative research. So from the term itself, random sampling means any member among the entire population has an equal chance to be selected. There are various ways of obtaining samples through simple random sampling. So in the past, as in random, let's say you are interviewing people inside a hotel, inside a company, no? And but now we are doing it digitally, no? So if you are going to select people, there are a lot of ways that you can use, no, a lot of tools online, 'di ba? Meron nga tayong mga randomizer, yung random wheel spinner, etc. So kagaya dito sa image that shows how simple random sampling works. Let's say you have a population of 12. Anybody could be selected, no? It could be number 3, it could be number 5, it could be number 11. And then you have this fish bowl where you can also draw lots, no? Parang tipong, for example, no, yung sweepstakes, no, lotto. As in, talagang binubunot lang yung bola from the the huge container, right? So, ganun din, no? That's how the simple random sampling works. We also have what we call as stratified random sampling. So when you say stratified random sampling, it is almost the same with simple random sampling. However, okay, the population is first divided into strata or groups. So you group people depending on a specific subcategory. Okay, so let's say you wanted to interview junior high school students. Okay, so yes, there are a lot of junior high school students, but you can group them depending on their grade level, like grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, grade 10. And what this does is that it equally distributes the population. Hindi yung, for example, let's say, kasi kapag total random sampling lang ang ginamit mo dito, chances are uneven yung distribution. Let's say mas marami ang sumagot na grade 7 or grade 8 and it's not your intention naman, as in binunot mo lang siya. Whereas kung gagawin mo siyang stratified random sampling, let's say you can prepare 4 bowls or 4 containers, tapos dito lahat ng grade 7, dito lahat ng grade 8, dito lahat ng grade 9, and dito lahat ng grade 10. And then you can divide it proportionally. Let's say pinakamarami yung grade 10 grade 9 students and grade 8 students, no? So, ganun karami din yung kukunin ko sa kanila, just like what we have in the table below. So, from grade 7, 72 yung kinuha nila. From grade 8, 65. From grade 8, 60. And then from grade 10, 43. So, total of 240 respondents. So, paano sila naka-arrive sa ganung number, no? They have divided the total number of the students from the entire population. So, kagaya niyan, yung grade 7 students, paano naging 72 yun? It's because the total population of grade 7 students according to the sample is 180. Okay? So, from there, you would compute and be able to determine na, okay, ang acceptable size would be 72. Okay? And then you add up all together, instead of interviewing or surveying 600, 240, okay na. So, mas malaki yung na-save mo na time, effort, and cost, no? So that's how stratified sampling works. And then we have this almost similar type of sampling, which is what we call the cluster sampling. From the term itself, it's called cluster because you need to group your um, respondents accordingly. Okay. For example, a researcher would like to interview all public senior high school students across Mindanao. The researcher cluster will be selected to satisfy the plan size. In the given example, the first cluster can be by region, and then second cluster can be by division, and then the third cluster can be by district. So, there is also a grouping. So, I'm sure you might be wondering, anong difference ng stratified random sampling from cluster sampling? And I have selected this image to better explain to you yung difference ng dalawa. With stratified random sampling, you are grouping people and then you are selecting um, those who will participate out of certain groups. No? You have distributed it evenly. Whereas with cluster, grinupo mo sila and you will only select groups. So for example, limang grupo dito sa image. And then you will pick randomly among the groups. Yung group mismo, hindi people inside the group. So yung number 2 na group and yung number 4 na group ang ating kinuha. Okay? So that's how cluster sampling works. Next, we have systematic sampling. So this procedure is as simple as selecting samples every nth example, every second, or every fifth. So meron tayong sample, let's say 1 to 100, and sinabi mo, gusto ko lahat ng second. So you will pick number 2, number 12, number 22, number 32, 42, 52, hanggang sa makarating ka sa 92. Okay? In essence, that is still random. Okay? Kasi hindi mo naman alam kung sino yung every second of the entire population. Okay? Ang kagandahan lang nito, from the term itself, it is systematic. No? So, hindi na malilito yung mga tao, or let's say, ikaw yung leader of the research group. Hindi na sila malilito na, ano po bang gagawin namin, sir or ma'am? So, paano namin malalaman sino yung pipiliin, right? Whereas, kung meron na kayong system, okay, every second, yun yung kukunin natin. Let's say, nasa mall ka, may pumapasok, tapos pinapa-survey mo yung mga pumapasok, no? Kada pangalawang papasok, bigyan natin ng survey form. Okay? So, that's how systematic sampling works. Okay, so we're done with the different types of sampling. Now, we go to research instrument and validity. So, here in this chapter, it all talks about paano ba yung validation, no, of an instrument. no? Paano yung reliability? So, alam natin that you will be creating questionnaires, right? You can do it in Google form or pwede rin kayo mag-distribute, no? As long as it is approved by your school, your advisor. Although as far as I know, it's still much better to do surveying remotely, no, to avoid contact and to avoid getting disease. Okay? Especially ngayon, no, meron pa rin tayong quarantine situation here in the Philippines. So, it's still better to do questioning online. Okay? And it's very convenient. Okay? Kasi hindi ka na magpiprint. I'm also an advocate for paperless surveying, ano, para wala ka nang masyadong paper waste. Okay? So, you can do the surveying online. And then there are performance tests, questionnaires, pwede ka rin mag-interview, or there could be a checklist. Okay? Bottom line, there are a lot of instruments available already. Okay? So, if you will be doing a certain research, kagaya nga na nabanggit ko in the past, you really have to read. Na wag niyong katatamaran yung magbasa. Kasi if you would read similar studies, makikita mo kung ano yung ginamit nila na instrument. And most of the time, those instruments are already tested and verified. Kung marami nang gumamit nung test na yon, questionnaire na yon. So, for you as a student, hindi ka na mahihirapang ipa-approve or pa-validate yun. Kasi pagka nakita yun ng advisor mo or ng mga panel, and then you mentioned that it is already an existing questionnaire or instrument, no, inadopt nyo lang, no, hindi na nila pwedeng questionin yun kasi it is already a tested instrument. Ginamit na siya in the past. Now, a good instrument has several characteristics, like it has to be concise, sequential, no, there must be a sequence that is followed, clear and concise. It must be valid and reliable and easily tabulated. Okay? Madali for you to tabulate, no? Hindi ka mahihirapan na i-transfer siya. Now, if you would decide, no, kunwari, ayaw mo yung instruments na available online or sadyang yung topic mo ay bago at marami kang elements na gustong ilagay dun sa questionnaires na hindi available dun sa old instruments, you can actually do a research instrument. But you have to have this approved by experts, no? In universities or colleges, what we are doing is, let's say you have developed a questionnaire, okay? You must have this inspected by at least 10 professors, okay? And then once they have all agreed upon the design of that instrument, at saka mo lang siya pwedeng gamitin. Okay? So maraming chine-check dyan. Chine-check yung grammar, yung composition, yung statistic side, so on and so forth. Okay? So common scales used in quantitative research, you have the Likert scale. So Likert scale, pinaka-common yan, and measures the attitude of students. Dito sa example natin, ano, this is your Likert scale, from poles of strongly agreeing and strongly disagreeing. Okay? And then, ito na yung tinatawag nating 5-point Likert scale. Ano? Pwede rin yun. Or pwede rin semantic differential. Okay? Meaning, you have opposite poles and then hindi na nakalagay kung ano yung definition ng 4-3-2, yung nasa gitna. Nakalagay na lang yung opposite poles like pleasant and unpleasant, enthusiastic and unenthusiastic, competent and incompetent. And then it's up to them kung saan level nila gustong ilagay yung kanilang rating. Okay? In this scale, a series of bipolar adjectives will be rated by the respondents. Scale seems to be more advantageous since it's more flexible and easier to construct. So you can also do this in Google form. It's very easy to do this nowadays. Okay? So, marami ding ways on how you could validate the instrument. But this one is all, it has to be followed by your advisors, not you, no? Pwede mo siyang gawing guide in order for you to create your instrument, and from your point gusto mo lang siya maging valid, ano. But again, it would depend on the advisor, kasi kung advisors and panel of professors kung ano yung final output ng instrument na gusto nila makita. But to test that, you can validate it yourself using this validity ways like face validity, no, how it appears, no, yung unang tingin pa lang ng instrument, tatama rin ba or sisipaging magsagot yung iyong respondent. The content, no, is the content clear? Does it elicit the needed information? Yung construct niya, it refers to the validity of instrument as it corresponds to theoretical construct. So let's say, meron kang study about, let's say, job satisfaction. Meron ba siyang relevant theories injected in the instrument? Okay. Concurrent validity, when the instrument can predict results similar to those similar tests. So dapat again, in congruent siya or it jives with what is already there. Hindi yung gumawa ka ng totally bago sa'yo na malayong malayo dun sa mga existing. Ano? And then you have predictive validity. When the instrument is able to produce results similar to those tests that will be employed in the future. So, a research instrument is considered valid if it measures what it is supposed to measure. So, napaka-basic ng statement na yun. Ano? And again, yun yung reason why we are creating an instrument. No? Kung yung instrument natin invalid, then the entire study will be invalid. That's why it is very critical to create the right instrument. And just to add, ano, minsan kasi masyadong masaya yung student, no, na approve na yung title nila, nagawa na nila chapters 1 to 3. And then doon sila nagpabaya sa questionnaire. Okay? Makakarating kayo sa dulo, you would gather all the data and then hindi siya, alam niyo yun, hindi siya nakapasa sa panlasa at approval or standards ng inyong panel and professor, then useless lahat ng ginawa ninyo, no? That's why from the tool that you would be using, it needs to be validated. Okay? Kailangan ipa-check nyo talaga siya sa inyong mga teachers. Okay? We also have reliability instruments. No? So, test and retest reliability achieved by giving the same test to the same group of respondents twice, and pagka chinek nyo, kapareho pa rin yung sagot, no? Or ay almost identical. Okay? Kasi hindi nakakalito yung pagkakagawa ng inyong questionnaire. Equivalent form reliability established by administering two identical tests except for wordings to the same group of respondents. So, pwede ka rin, kung gusto nyo masiguro yung accuracy ng inyong test, no? Although it will take a lot of time, pwede kayong mag-equivalent forms reliability. Meaning, magbibigay din kayo ng same set of questionnaires or same questionnaire to same set of people, but hindi nila malalaman na pareho pala yung content nun because you have changed some wordings, no, or parang you are framing it to be different. Okay, but you are just trying to measure the same thing. Okay, the term internal consistent reliability and how well the items measure the same construct. It is reasonable that when a respondent gets a high score in one item, he will also get one in similar items. Okay? So, this is dependent on the Cronbach alpha and Kuder-Richardson formula. So, this is more on the statistics side. So, now let's go to lesson 4 or research intervention. Dito, in the previous discussion on quantitative research designs, you were taught about quasi-experimental and experimental design. Its uniqueness from other research designs was also described. Remember that experimental research design controls or manipulates the independent variable. So, in experimental research, the researcher decides the nature of intervention. Pag sinabi mong intervention, yung pagpasok, no, or gaano kalawak yung participation of all the people involved in your research. Decision covers who will receive the intervention and to what extent it will be applied. For example, in a study of determining the effects of special tutorial program to learners at risk of failing, the researcher decides the group of um, LARF who will receive intervention. And in this example, a special tutorial program is the research intervention. Furthermore, the extent to which the program will be administered to the learners is determined. So dito no po makikita natin na yung mismong research is also a form of an intervention, okay? Um Itong mga bata na gusto nating gawing subject for our research, okay? They are categorized as LARF or at risk of failing. Babagsak na sila. So, it is a very timely na meron kang gustong gawing research about the effectiveness of the tutorial program or remedial program or kung anumang aid yung ginagawa mo para masupplement yung learning needs ng mga bata. Okay? It is a form of an intervention, ano, kasi papasok ka diyan, let's say hindi yan research, no, it ginagawa pa rin yan ng mga teachers and ng schools because again the students are at risk. But what's good with this is that this intervention becomes a research in itself. Okay, ginawa mo siya para at the same time mapag-aralan mo na rin kung gumagana ba talaga itong tutorial program na ini-implement natin, right? So there are steps in describing the research intervention process. So similar lang din dun sa what we have previously discussed. No, you have to write down the background information, describe the differences and similarities between experimental and control group, describe the process of intervention, and explain the basis of procedures. So ito, I have not put a great deal of explanation to this because it is rarely done naman at the level of high school student, but this is more for higher form of research where you would conduct experiments, no, and you have an experimental group. Okay, siguro naman at your level hindi pa naman kayo gagawa ng your own design of what you call as a tutorial, no, a tutorial method which you will deem effective or not effective, ano? That's not up for you to know, but for people or experts who are already in the field. Okay, so hindi ko na siya masyadong i-explain. And in lesson 5, we have the planning and data collection procedure. So kailangan din kasi talaga pagplanuhan natin, ano, paano ba natin gagawin yung ating data collection, no? Yung time element, where are you going to do this, gaano katagal, all of these things have to be planned ahead, okay? So in collecting quantitative data, okay, there are many techniques, no? Again, sabi nga natin, pwede kayong mag-survey, okay? Pwede kayong mag-interview, pwede rin mag-experiment. It depends on what type of research design you have, okay? Pag mga scientific researches, more on observation yan, no? Observation, gathering information about certain condition by using senses. The researcher records the observation as seen and heard. This is done by direct observation or indirect observation. Yan, by the use of gadgets or apparatus. So, ano yung mga examples ng indirect observation? No? For example, di ba, ngayon sa Manila, meron tayong tinatawag na no contact apprehension, meaning, kung meron kang mga traffic violations, hindi ka man mahuli ng traffic enforcers, no, or MMDA, merong mga security cameras or CCTVs who are acting as indirect observers. Okay? And then later on, through machines, through technology, AI technology, malalaman nila if somebody beat the red light, tapos yung high precision cameras nun, kayang malaman yung plate number mo, gaano ka kabilis. Di ba meron ngang scanner na ginagamit ngayon para ma-measure yung bilis ng isang vehicle? Makikita mo sa mga news na sa EDSA nakatutok sila yung parang may gun tapos na may measure yung bilis ng isang sasakyan that is approaching. So that is a form of an observation, ano. Another would be survey. So ito, no need to explain further. You all know what survey is, how it is done. Experiment, when your study is an experimental design. So kung experimental design, saka ka gagamit ng experiment. And this is more for scientific researches, no. Discussed in the previous lesson that it would use treatment or interventions. Okay? Kasi meron kang mga experiment group, test group, so on and so forth. So you can also perform this activity, okay? Looking at the flow chart, what do you think is the research design of the study? So, babalikan nyo lang dito yung research design na pinakita ko kanina, okay? And alamin ninyo no kung anong klaseng research design yung applied for this. So in lesson 6, we have the planning and data analysis. And if you would recall, statistics and probability is a subject that is a prerequisite for practical research too. No, I am also teaching statistics and probability. No, so kailangan natin siyang daanan before you can even go to practical research too. Because in this part, you will be analyzing data, and although I'm not saying 100% kayo ang gagawa, no? Or hindi na kayo pwedeng manghingi ng assistance from your advisors, but it would take a great deal of knowing what type of statistical test you should do. Okay? Data analysis and research is a process in which gathered information are summarized and in such a manner that it will yield answers to the research questions. Okay? These numerical data are usually subject to statistical treatment depending on the nature of data and the type of research problem presented. So, planning your data analysis before choosing what statistic test is appropriate for your research study, it is important to determine what statistical formation is applicable to your current study. So, ano ba yung applicable? No? Yun yung kailangan ninyong malaman. Okay? The descriptive statistical technique provides a summary of the ordered or sequenced data from your research sample. Frequency distribution, measure of central tendency like yung mean, median, and mode. Standard deviations are the sets of data from descriptive statistics. And then we also have inferential statistics. It is used when the research study focuses on finding prediction, testing hypothesis, and finding interpretations, generalizations, and conclusions. Okay? Since this statistical method is more complex and has more advanced mathematical computations, pwede kayong gumamit ng computer software like SPSS if it's available for your school, or meron namang mga similar to SPSS kasi SPSS is licensed. Okay? Kailangan mo ng license to get the software and maybe operate it, no? Kasi meron din ako mga kakilala who are SPSS certified. Okay? So, like for me, I can use SPSS, but if I need statistical data and interpretation, I would need an assistance from a statistician. Okay? Now, in addition, in choosing statistical techniques in quantitative research, okay, the purpose or objective of the research study should be considered. So it really needs to be cleared what type of research you will be pursuing. Kasi from it, you would know what type of statistical method you will be using. Like for example, if your research is about testing the relationship between two variables, let's say the relationship of job satisfaction from leadership or leadership to job satisfaction. Meron kang dalawang variables no, the independent and dependent variable. So you can use a lot of statistical tools. You can use Pearson R parametric. You can use phi coefficient, pi coefficient, non-parametric for nominal and dichotomous variables. You can also use Spearman rho, non-parametric for ordinal variable. And then test of difference, if ang inaalam mo naman sa research mo ay test of difference between two data sets, okay? The difference between blah blah, no? So, pwede kang gumamit yan t-test, McNemar change test, non-parametric, Wilcoxon signed rank test. At kung meron ka, ang research mo naman ay difference between two data sets from two different groups, so mas malawak na yan. You will use t-test for independent samples, two-way chi-square, Mann-Whitney U-test. No? And let's say your research is for more than two population means. No? Ang gagamitin mo dyan is analysis of variance or ANOVA. Test if you want to know the strength of relations or effect or impact. Yan yung mga common, ano, the impact of, the effect of. So, ang gagamitin mo dyan ay parametric regression. So, bottom line is that meron na tayong guide, ano, as to what statistical test you will be doing. Now, whether you will be performing that statistical test using the SPSS, pwede kayo magpa-guide sa inyong mga math teachers, no, or your actual research teacher in doing so. Okay? Kasi I understand some of you might not be able to do this kasi medyo heavy na yung statistical side na yan eh. Kahit kami sa doctorate, pinag-aaralan pa rin namin yan up until this point. No? And bago namin siya gawin, ano, we seek assistance from experts, no, math major, statistics major, no, in doing so. So it would be best if we would bring this to people who are experts on the field rather than huhulaan mo lang yung test na gagamitin mo. Yes, meron kang guide, but in order to facilitate it and to get the right results, magpatulong kayo, no? So, yan. We have another activity, no? You can actually do this. As I have always said, no? Meron naman tayong answers for this. You just need to send me a message if you need assistance. And then we have come to the final lesson of this final lesson of this module, no, module 4. And it's just a compilation, no, and presenting the research methodology. So indeed, designing the research methodology in quantitative research is very challenging. And at this point, it is assumed that you are now ready to present. So yun na yung assumption natin eh. Kasi pinag-aralan na natin lahat. Yung research design, yung population and sample, what sampling and procedure method you will use, anong research instrument yung gagamitin mo, how would you validate and check the reliability of your questionnaire, your survey, your instrument. Is it going to have its own research intervention? If applicable, nakalagay dyan. Ano? Kasi again, hindi naman siya applicable sa lahat ng uri ng research. And then what data collection procedure will you follow and how would you analyze it? No? All of these are written in the paragraph format as part of your research methodology. In this lesson, you will be given guidelines in presenting this research portion after presentation. And the most exciting part follows, and that is the actual gathering of your data. So dito, this is more of you being prepared. I-check mo muna itong checklist na to. Have I done all the right things here? No? Kasi actual survey na ang kasunod nito eh. And then after that, you will be interpreting the data. So that's about it. This has been a long discussion, and I hope you have learned something. Ano? For questions and clarifications, again, you can reach me on my socials, and I'll try my best to respond whenever I'm free. And for more videos like this, you can check out my playlists. I have tons of content you might be interested in. In research, I have already discussed previous modules, practical research 1, and even higher forms of research in college. So there, I wish you good luck in your preparation of module 4, and see you on the next video.